Today's episode is all about finding motivated sellers on the market. This is episode 162 of the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast with me, Chris Rickenbaugh, and I am using this podcast to document my journey in real estate and business and also talk a little bit about travel hacking and personal finance. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at chris.rickenbaugh. That's chris.reichen.bach. And you can keep listening to this podcast right where you are, or you can listen on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Amazon Music. So today's episode is meant to be short and sweet and to the point, because everybody is trying to find their first deal, and especially for those people trying to find their first deal, they don't know where to look. They've had somebody tell them that they need to go put $5,000 to $10,000 into direct mail marketing. They need to be able to go knock all these doors and put so many hours and hours and hours into it, where all you really need to do is be able to get on what everybody else does and be able to just figure out what you're exactly looking for. So those three websites I primarily use, or I usually only use two, is Zillow, Homes.com, and Redfin. So Zillow and Homes.com are my favorite to go to, because Homes.com, you can search for a little bit more keywords and you're able to narrow down that search a little bit more. But the problem is you're not able to get as much information and see when that house was sold. So what I do when I find houses that I like, that fit my buy box or might look interesting, all I do is copy and paste that address over into Zillow, and then I'm able to see exactly when the house is sold and get a little bit more information. So those two really go hand in hand for me. So I want to be able to help you guys, figure out what to look for in those houses that are on the market. So after we've narrowed down those two websites, let's say we're using Homes.com and Zillow, I would say you're probably going to be finding a house that's in need. If you're flipping or wholesaling, what you're going to be looking for is bad pictures. Sometimes they need paint. Sometimes the kitchen doesn't look great. It's old tile, old bathrooms, something that's like, yeah, I probably wouldn't live in that, and it just needs updated. That's exactly what you're looking for on all of these houses. So being able to just pull up let's say a range of 20 to 30 houses, and you're able to just kind of scroll through and see, like, okay, this one needs paint, there's some really bad pictures here. That's probably why it's not selling. But the thing I really like is that you're looking for homes that are about 90 days plus on the market. So in Homes.com, you're able to do that. You're able to separate it so you can see that they've been on the market for a little bit longer, normally 3 months. So that's about 90 days. And then that really narrows down the range. If you wanted to be crazy, you can go up to 6 months, and then you're really going to find some motivated sellers. But I found that sweet spot to be around 100 days. Then after we've narrowed down those 100 days, you're going to want to go down to purchase price. So for me in my area, I don't want to be buying anything over $350,000. So that's normally a pretty good sweet spot, because a lot of these sellers are still trying to get their number. Even though the house needs a lot of work, they're still trying to get that top dollar number. So maybe I need it under $280,000, and let's say they have it marketed at $320,000. I still feel comfortable at sending in my offer anywhere below my number, and they're probably going to be willing to play a little bit of ball because it's been on the market for a long time. They're not getting their number, and you're able to say to them, hey, this is what I need to be able to do to it. What can you guys do? So then you can play ball a little bit if you don't get it direct no. But finding those houses in general, so you got your 90 days, you have your purchase price that you don't want to be over, and then, you're going in and doing your digging. So your areas, the houses could be fixed up. So that's when you start running your numbers. Zillow, I think, is the easiest way to do that. So copy and paste that into Zillow to where you can kind of run your ARV numbers, see what's sold in the area. I think it's just a little bit easier on that platform. And then once you kind of find the ARV and see, okay, I like this purchase price, I see the spread here, let's go ahead and figure out some of the other little details on this property. So for me, if I'm looking for a subject to deal, I'm looking for it to be bought within the last probably any time between now and, or a couple months ago, and probably 3 or 4 years, probably not 5. That starts to get a little bit too much out to where they have a little bit of equity, they had a lot of appreciation, so they're not willing to come down on that number. So if I'm looking for those subject to houses, I'm looking for something that's been sold recently and that's being resold right at the same price, because I know that's a seller that's just trying to get out of it and they don't have a lot of equity, and they can't sell it for anything less than that because they're going to have to come to the closing table with money. Now, if I'm looking for a flip, it's a lot more straightforward, because all you're doing is you can find that ARV, and if their number is anywhere close to that number, it's probably not something that's going to be able to work out for you. But if you're looking for that first deal, make sure you go ahead and send that offer anyway at your number. Give an explanation of why you're at that number, because a lot of the sellers think, oh, it's a great house, the market's great here, and this is the number I want. But the problem is, that's the reason their house is on the market for sale. So go ahead and shoot that offer out anyway. But some of those extra keywords that you could be looking for, especially if you're looking for a flip, are as is, because they're selling as is, meaning they're going to make no repairs. They just want to get rid of it. They don't want to touch the house and put any more money into it. So then through that, you're able to negotiate a little bit more, because you're showing how much work you're probably going to have to be putting into the house. And then an easy one is motivated seller. So you can kind of, I haven't found a ton of luck with this one, but I do find it sometimes when I'm looking for subject to, because they're needing to sell that property quickly. And most of the time, what they're offering is, $5,000, $10,000 or more seller concessions. So if they're willing to give seller concessions, they're already willing to play ball. And that's a green light for you, especially if it's subject to, because they're like, hey, this house is move-in ready, but we just need to be able to get out of it as soon as possible. So if you're presenting a creative finance offer, you're willing to, or you're able to be able to, creatively make that deal, get the agent on the phone, present an offer, and see what those people are open to, and then be able to go from there. But as for flipping, you're looking for those distressed houses. You're looking for the long grass. You're looking for vacant homes, something that you can tell was either a rental that maybe has been inherited. So that was one of the last ones that I purchased. It had been a rental. It had been on the market for not that long, actually, and somebody was just making phone calls and they found something right around 30 days on the market, needed a ton of work, and he got it under contract $100,000 under what they were asking, just by calling and asking those questions. So there are plenty of deals out there. You just have to be able to know what to look for and then be able to call it. So if houses need work, don't be afraid to call and make your offer, because that's where those deals could be landing. Most people just pass over them because the number is too high. So I want to end right on that, because I think that was a great point to make, especially for newbies, somebody looking to get into it, or somebody that's been into the game and, just kind of trying to figure it out, as we all are. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast. I'm going to be back with episode 163 on Friday, and I'm going to have a guest talking about the co-living strategy that is absolutely blowing up Charlotte, blowing up Atlanta, and all across the country, with probably fixing the affordability. So I'm super interested to hear that conversation, and I know you will be too. So make sure you tune in for that. But as for this episode, this is Chris Rickenbaugh for the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast saying I'll see you next time.